People who don't know how to communicate think everything is an argument. The emotional hijack loop definition: the physiological process where your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, overrides your prefrontal cortex, your logic center, turning a neutral conversation into a survival crisis within zero point 0.2 seconds. When you feel attacked in a conversation, you aren't choosing to argue. Your biology is doing it for you. Your heart rate spikes, adrenaline floods your system, and blood diverts away from your brain's reasoning center. In this state, you cannot hear solutions. You cannot hear nuance, you only hear the threat. Take a moment and think of the last time you snapped at a partner or a colleague. Did you actually pause to rationally think, I am safe, no one is harming me? Or did you just react? When you don't understand how to communicate calmly, your body mistakes a disagreeing opinion for a physical assault. The argument isn't happening because the topic is controversial. The argument is happening because your nervous system panicked. The ego-centric preservation definition: the unconscious belief that agreeing with someone, or simply being questioned, is a direct blow to your personal worth and identity. Here is the uncomfortable truth. When you quickly turn things into arguments, you are not fighting the topic. You are fighting to protect your ego. You have conflated your identity with your opinions. If someone criticizes your work, you feel they are rejecting you. If someone disagrees with your politics, you feel they are rejecting your character. Because your self-worth is too tightly tied to being right, you cannot separate the problem from your personhood. This leads you to attack anyone who doesn't validate your perspective. You don't argue to learn. You argue to defend the fortress of your self-image. Reflection check. Take 30 seconds and ask yourself, do I feel like less of a person when I am proven wrong? If the answer is yes, this term applies directly to you. Hostile attribution bias. Definition: the cognitive distortion where you automatically interpret ambiguous or neutral comments as having hostile, malicious intent toward you. This is the specific mechanism that turns a simple question into a war. Consider this scenario. A colleague asks you, "Did you send that email yet?" If you have hostile attribution bias, you don't hear a factual question. You hear an accusation. You are slow, you are forgetful, you are an incompetent employee. Because you invent a hidden negative motive behind their words, you respond with a defensive counterpunch. Why are you always breathing down my neck? You don't trust me? Notice how you shifted the conversation from the email to an interpersonal attack. You took a neutral query and projected your own insecurity onto it, effectively creating an argument out of thin air. You are the one who started the fight, but you will blame them for provoking you. The zero-sum interaction model. Definition: the belief that all communication is a win-lose competition, where your ability to acknowledge another's point equates to your surrender and defeat. When you operate with a zero-sum mindset, you view listening to the other person as a weakness. If they make a valid point and you say, "You know what? You're right about that," your brain treats that as a loss on the scoreboard. You fear that if you give an inch, they will take a mile, or that they will view you as less than them. So instead of collaborating, you dig your heels in, you talk over them. You use logical fallacies to derail their argument. You interrupt them to prove your point before they can finish theirs. You are not communicating, you are wrestling for dominance. And a wrestling match is, by definition, an argument. Narrative collapse. Definition: the emotional overwhelm you experience when reality doesn't match the story you have built in your head, causing you to verbally lash out. A lot of your tendency to argue comes from frustration when reality breaks your internal narrative. You had a specific expectation of how the day would go, how that person should treat you, or how a project should unfold. When reality deviates from that script, you don't know how to handle the discomfort. Instead of processing the shift, okay, the plan changed, let's adapt, you project that discomfort outward as anger. You start an argument not because you care about the topic, but because you cannot tolerate the feeling of having your expectations challenged. Your argument is actually a tantrum disguised as logic. The logic-emotion disconnect definition. The failure to differentiate between the factual content of a conversation and the emotional subtext, leading you to attack the wrong layer. Here's the most vital thing you need to understand. Every conversation has two layers. Layer 1 is the content, the facts, the data, the issue. Layer 2 is the subtext, the emotions, the intentions, the relationship. When you lack communication skills, you always attack layer 1,